Hello and welcome to The Low Voice. In today's episode, we're diving into something truly fascinating, the contradictions that exist within us as human beings. I came across a thought-provoking piece of writing, often attributed to Shakespeare, though its true origins are debated, that perfectly captures the paradoxes of how we behave. It goes like this. You say you love rain, but you open your umbrella. You say you love the sun, but you find a shadow spot. You say you love wind, but you close your windows. This is why I am afraid, when you say you love me. At first glance, it's a simple poem, but it carries a deep and complex message about the contradictions in our lives. It makes you pause and reflect. Why do we often say one thing but act differently? Why do we romanticize things we don't fully embrace? In this episode, we'll explore these questions, break down the poem's meaning, and take a closer look at why contradictions are such a natural but puzzling part of being human. So, let's begin. Let's start by unpacking the poem itself. The first line says, "You say you love rain, but you open your umbrella." We often claim to love rain, associating it with romance, nostalgia, or peaceful moments. But the reality is, when it rains, most of us try to protect ourselves from getting wet. We stay indoors or rush to find cover. So, do we love the idea of rain more than rain itself? Perhaps it's the poetic or symbolic nature of rain that we're drawn to. But when it comes to the reality, the wet clothes, the chill, it's a different story. Then we have, you say you love the sun, but you find a shadow spot. The sun, often seen as a symbol of joy and vitality, is something we claim to adore. But when it's too hot, we seek shade. This line highlights how we enjoy things in moderation. We crave the sun, but only when it's comfortable. It makes me wonder, do we truly love the sun, or do we just love the version of it that suits us? The third line says, you say you love wind, but you close your windows. The wind is another thing we romanticize. There's something freeing about it. But when it becomes too strong, disruptive, or cold, we shut it out. It's a reminder of how quickly we turn away from something we love when it becomes inconvenient. Finally, the poem concludes with, "This is why I am afraid, when you say you love me." This line ties everything together. If we approach love the same way we approach rain, sun, or wind, loving only the idea of it, or loving it only when it's easy, then how can love truly thrive? It's a vulnerable and honest admission of fear. This poem doesn't just talk about rain or wind. It's a metaphor for how we engage with life and relationships. It forces us to confront whether our actions align with our words, and whether we're willing to embrace the whole truth of what we claim to love, including its imperfections. Now that we've explored the poem, let's take a step back and think about why we act this way. Why do we often contradict ourselves? Psychologists have a term for this, cognitive dissonance. It's when our thoughts, beliefs, or words don't match our actions. For example, we say we love rain, but the moment it starts pouring, we instinctively grab an umbrella. This creates a kind of tension in our minds, because deep down, we want to believe we're consistent, but our actions show otherwise. This tension often pushes us to justify our behavior. We might say, "Oh, I love rain, but I don't want to get sick." Or, "I love the sun, but too much exposure is harmful." These justifications help us make sense of the contradictions within us. But beyond cognitive dissonance, there's also the element of fear and discomfort. As human beings, we naturally gravitate toward what feels safe and comfortable. We might romanticize rain or wind, but only when it's distant, manageable, or fits into our idealized version of life. When it challenges our comfort, when rain soaks us or wind chills us, we retreat. And isn't that the same with love? Love at its core is messy, imperfect, and unpredictable. We might say we love someone, but when things get hard, when it demands vulnerability or risks heartbreak, we may instinctively pull away. It's a survival mechanism, but one that can sometimes hold us back from experiencing the fullness of what we truly want. So, these contradictions are deeply human. They reveal how we navigate the balance between idealism and reality, between what we desire and what we're willing to endure. And perhaps they teach us that true love, whether for a person, a passion, or life itself, isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about embracing it, just as it comes. This brings us to one of the most powerful aspects of the poem, its connection to love and relationships. The final line, "This is why I am afraid when you say you love me," speaks to a universal fear. It's the fear of conditional love, the kind of love that's only present when things are easy, beautiful, or convenient. It asks, will you still love me when I'm difficult, when I'm not perfect, when loving me requires effort? In relationships, it's common to idealize the concept of love. We think of it as something light and joyful, like the sun on a warm day. But just like the sun can burn, love can challenge us. It requires patience, compromise, and sometimes enduring storms together. How often do we, as humans, love only the idea of a person? We love their laughter, their beauty, their strengths, but what about their vulnerabilities, their bad days, their imperfections? Real love asks us to embrace the whole person, not just the parts that are easy to adore. This poem also reflects the insecurity that many people feel in relationships. If we are inconsistent with how we love the world, like opening umbrellas when we claim to love rain, how can we trust ourselves or others to stay consistent in love? It's a raw and honest question, and one that challenges us to think about how we show up in relationships. Ultimately, love is about acceptance. It's about weathering the rain, standing in the sun even when it's hot, and opening the windows to feel the wind, even when it's strong. It's about choosing to stay present, even when it's uncomfortable. That's where real love exists, in the messy, imperfect moments that require us to step out of our comfort zones. When I think about the contradictions in this poem, I can't help but reflect on my own life. How many times have I said I love something, but only when it's convenient? How often do I hesitate when things become uncomfortable, even for the things or people I truly care about? I remember a time when I told myself I loved taking risks, embracing challenges. It sounded so empowering in theory, but when I was actually faced with a situation where the risk was real, when failure was a possibility, I hesitated. I wanted the idea of bravery without the reality of fear. And isn't that the same with love? Loving someone, or even loving yourself, isn't always easy. There will be days when love feels effortless, like sunshine on a calm morning. But then there are days when love feels heavy, like standing in the pouring rain without an umbrella. The question is, do we have the courage to stay, to feel it all, to embrace the messy, imperfect moments? This poem reminds me that real connection, whether it's to a person, a passion, or even life itself, requires more than just words. It demands action, patience, and vulnerability. And maybe, just maybe, it's in those moments of discomfort where the deepest and truest love is found. As we wrap up this episode, I think the beauty of this poem lies in its simplicity and truth. It's a mirror, reflecting back the contradictions we all experience as human beings. It doesn't judge us for them. It simply invites us to look closer, to ask ourselves if we're truly living and loving with authenticity. Life, like love, isn't meant to be perfect. It's messy, unpredictable, and often uncomfortable. But maybe that's what makes it so beautiful. When we stop trying to shield ourselves from the rain, avoid the heat of the sun, or block out the wind, we open ourselves to the full experience of life, raw, real, and alive. So, as you go about your day, I invite you to reflect on this. What do you say you love? And how do you show it, even when it's inconvenient or imperfect? Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and let's keep exploring the complexities of being human, one layer at a time.